Nostalgia, a feeling that we are all familiar with, sitting down and thinking about how things used to be, a simpler time. And I hate it. I can't stand it. Well, let me be more specific. I don't hate the feeling of nostalgia, that's fine. I just despise the way how we see it, especially right now. It feels like everyone is trapped inside of some kind of spell, a mindset that things used to be amazing and awesome back then, and stuff now is just boring and lame. You know, that generic thing that I know for a fact you have seen before. It's infected almost every community on the internet. But unlike most dumb conversations you see people have on the internet and in real life, where yeah, it does have some effect in the real world, but you can mostly just ignore it. You can't do it with nostalgia poisoning. This is something that is so deep and affects every aspect of your life. It is terrible. My two favorite side effects of people being poisoned by this is that we have millions of people around the world nostalgic for a time period that they didn't even exist in. I don't even know how something like that even happens. And then you have the rewriting of history where people look at something that's trash and still garbage to this day, but because the nostalgia sets in, it's suddenly randomly good. No, the world doesn't work like that. And it can also lead to people like me and you getting deceived to play or watch a piece of media that everyone talks about being amazing just for you to look in and it's garbage. This ended up happening to me with Danganronpa. I hear everyone talks about how amazing and cool these games are. And you know what? I decided to fall for hype and play all of them. They are trash. Every single one of them. These games just consistently get worse the more you play it, especially the second one. That game is just horrible. I have no idea how this is the GOAT of the whole franchise and everyone talks about how amazing it is and good storytelling. Did I play a different game? Did I accidentally walk inside of an alternate dimension and got the trash garbage version of it and everyone else who talks about it played the correct one? Because this is horrible. The only redeeming quality from this series is that the soundtrack is amazing. It's so good. The fan base is unhinged and definitely are suffering from some mental issues, but in the good way because there are some funny things that come from it, and that it has some of the most attractive characters in the history of fiction. I mean, we got characters like Monokuma, Monami. Yeah, that's it. There's no one else. And speaking of trash, when people bring up nostalgia, they're just talking about the same things over and over again. I mean, I know why this happened. A lot of people are normal and have the same experience, but they want to pretend that they're special so they can feed in this fantasy that they're actually deep and way more cooler than the average person. So that's why they will bring up overly talked about things, but just pretend that no, mine is different because I'm so cool. And that's lame. I want something that I could relate to, a thing that I'm very nostalgic for. And then I remember, I have the capability to make videos and post wherever I want on the internet. So even though I started this video making fun of nostalgia, I am going to talk about one thing that I have a lot of memories of me doing back then. For me to do that, we're going to need to set the scene. So get ready. For this story, we're going to go back in time. Imagine being me, a black nerd with barely any friends and no social skills, and the rapid urge to goon. What do you think you're going to do with your free time? Go outside and hang out with other people? No. Be a productive member of society and get a day job? Of course not. Obviously, you're going to spend all your time watching anime and also make it a part of your identity that you know super deep anime that most people will know nothing about and have zero cultural relevancy at all. I mean, we're talking about real bangers like Anne's Happy, Three Leaves, Three Colors, Uma Musume before it became extremely popular and it had a small community that was actually good and not the trash that it is right now, where the community is just 50% brain dead idiot and then the other half is the most racist people to ever exist on the planet. If you went outside back then and ended up saying something Uma Musume related, like Shinko Winnie, you will be thrown inside of a mental asylum. Even if you go into community community right now and scream the name of that character, you'll actually probably still be thrown in there, since the majority of people in there are LARPers and don't interact with the franchise. Eventually, you'll reach a point where you watch so much trash. The only one way to continue to make yourself special in this community that you don't even participate in is that you have to go to one category of the anime space that no one cares about: visual novels. This was a golden apple for me, a whole subconscious of Japanese media that I could explore. No one talked about it, so I can continue to be my very quirky, special person, a persona that I ended up building for myself and tried so hard to keep, and was right at my doorstep. There was only one problem: I couldn't play any of them. Yes, most of these visual novels will only release in Japan. The only ones that ended up getting any type of translation into English or any other language were very big mainstream ones, like Danganronpa or Nekopara. If they didn't get one officially, you have to hope that the community was good enough to make a fan translation of the language that you can speak. And a lot of them at the time didn't have that. There was no other way for you to interact with this media unless you knew Japanese. Unless you listen to their openings. That was the only way where I can interact with this media. Yes, you still have no idea what they're saying, but I think we all know you don't need to fully understand the story of a song. I mean, when it comes to the actual game, you're not going to be able to get the plot points, the character arcs, or what's going on. All you could really do is look at the CGs and go like, yeah, that might be a very sad scene. This one looks like something good might be happening. Wait, I hear someone trying their hardest to ask a question in the way back of the crowd that I just made up and doesn't exist. Can you say the same thing about music? And my answer to that question is yes, you can. But in society, for some weird reason, we just don't value music that much. So, I'm just going to ignore that. Anyway, enough yapping. Let me actually start talking about these songs 8 minutes into the video. My lord. Even though I just said I was going to talk about mainstream ones, I lie. The first ones I need to bring up are the Nekopara openings. Every single one of them are very iconic to me. My favorite one easily has to be the third game. The best one, which like when you really compare them to all the other games that exist, that's not really that interesting. This is the only game where they actually try to have a somewhat interesting story, when most of them are too busy having crazy plot points like this character is sad or having with your sister. One character wants to go and start a music career, but they have to deal with horrible things like Neko oppression. Yes, that is something that happens. God, people who are not minorities want to be one so bad that they make stories where they can LARP as one and talk about how hard it is to be one. But we have to make all the characters white though. Let me stop talking about the terrible world building of one of the... I'm just talking about Nekopara's getting stuff in my throat. Hanax Witch Spring Girls. Sam is definitely going to be saying that because I know I messed that up. Opening Girls Meet Love is a true iconic banger. The beginning of it just hits me with a wave of nostalgia. It's the first visual novel opening that I ended up listening to way back then when the game ended up coming out in 2015, which was 11 years ago. Yeah, it is your average J-pop theme, but it gets the job done. Especially when you start reaching the part where, I know there's a name of it, but like when the beat finally drops and the song starts. I don't know anything about music, but when that part hits, it just goes crazy. This visual novel is one that I was actually able to play because there was a YouTuber who ended up doing translations of it and uploading it on YouTube, and then a community mod ended up coming out not so long after. And the plot of it is just your average visual novel slop. Average loser guy surrounded by a bunch of women who fall in love with him, even though that makes no sense because the main character has the personality of a plank of wood. I wonder why so much people, especially loser anime fans, were so attractive to these games back then. Uzinsoft is a company that dedicated itself to slowly making visual novels. They end up making a lot of iconic ones, unless I think they're iconic. I don't know anything about Japan, and I'm not going to be your average white person to pretend that I know Japanese history or culture. But one thing that I do know is that their openings are amazing. I recommend to listen to nearly a lot of them, but the ones that I remember the most is the opening of IXY. she tell. I don't know what delusional juice I was on when I was recording and writing this script. This company did not make this game. A completely different one did. So I don't even know how this even made it on the script. So just ignore I bring this up. I'm still gonna keep this section in because I listened to this one a lot, but just pretend I'm talking about something else, okay? I hate when like stuff have X and stuff in it because I don't know if I'm supposed to like pronounce it or not. Me saying that just made it sound like I had no idea how to speak English. The opening of Rebuttal Joke is also very enjoyable. The one I listened to the most has to be the opening of Cafe Stalls. This breaks the norm of being your average J-pop slop, and it's a more slower song. Perfect when you're sitting down and reading manga, because there's going to be no way that you're going to read a boring normal book. I mean, most people in general can barely even read, so it's not like they know what's going on. They're just looking at pictures. Their whole category of games have very good openings, and I recommend you listen to them all. Wagama High Spec, I know I got that name so wrong. The one fan of this series who's watching this just got so angry. I listened to the openings of this a lot. I ended up discovering this during my anime phase when I tried to watch as much anime as possible. They ended up releasing this little mini series where it's just the characters walking around and shenanigans happen. I didn't really understand because it was made with the assumption that you already played one of their games and knew the dynamic of these characters. Not that it's really that deep. I mean, it's a generic visual novel. Just look at these characters. Yes, they are all the stereotypes that you are thinking of. They also have very juicy openings. The best one is being the DLC for their very first game, where they ended up adding more characters that you can go and talk to, like having a relationship with your teacher, something that's not weird at all. The song that they ended up playing, Hey Darling, is actually one of my favorite anime openings ever, and that hands down has to be one of the most embarrassed things for me to say, because look at this series. This is the point of my life that I ended up meaning, where stuff has got so dire where I see something like this and I get hit with nostalgia. Okay, it's shameful, but me looking at this and listening to this song, it puts a bitter smile on my old, decrepit, miserable face. I also just want to bring up the style of visual novel openings in general. A lot of them will usually do the same thing where they'll take a couple CGs and animate them a little bit, or maybe if you're really lazy, you'll just take PNGs of the actual CGs and move around. Although that's rare and I don't see a lot of series just doing that. But I just love the way how the majority of these openings look. They take such a simple thing of just moving a couple of pictures, some of them even doing the poorly edited manga thing, and they just make such a unique style. I was so obsessed with these, and even way back then, I used to try to emulate and make my own version of these openings for other pieces of media that I watch. Unfortunately, I made those a very long time ago, so a lot of them don't really exist, but I do have the urge to try to remake them and maybe even share them in the future. I need to stop promising things that I'm gonna make. And that's it. Those are the main ones that I listen to consistently, even still to this day. There's a lot more visual novel openings that I can go bring up, but the main reason why I decided to pick this very small selection of them is that you can actually play these games now. Yes, a lot of them have official release in multiple different languages, and that's crazy to think because for the longest time in my life I always wanted to play these games and interact with them, but I just couldn't because they weren't translated in any way. And now that I could go on a place like Steam and actually see them and pick them up is crazy. It's a real full circle moment for me, where I used to spend all this time fantasizing and hoping that I could play these games and just being content with listening to their openings to it just being there. Definitely down the line I will want to go and talk about them, but I just said I'm going to stop promising things. Anyway, that's it. My name is Lua. You have a good day or night. See ya.
Mukuro Ikusaba.